Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you had a wonderful long weekend and were able to rest. I know that for me personally, this weekend has been a godsend because I finally feel like I have at least some of my energy back and I'm ready to keep fighting. So I hope you're ready to continue kicking some butt as well. Now, over the past couple of days, there were a ton of articles that came out that were talking about the state of freight and what we can expect from the freight industry, the trucking industry in the next few months, which is what prompted this video. Now, these articles, they theorize on a timeline of when the freight market is finally going to get better. So we're going to take this topic, we're going to dissect it, and towards the end of this video, I'm going to answer the question of whether it's a good time to get into the industry, because I'm almost 100% sure that there will be people asking this question. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I teach about the trucking industry, the freight market, the economy, and how it all affects the spot market since we're spot carriers. So if this is a topic that interests you, feel free to subscribe and join an awesome community. All right, let's chat about what's brewing with loads, rates, the freight market, the economy, and so on. Ready? Let's go. All right, so let's break it down step by step, and we're going to start with tender rejections because they are kind of one of the central points to this video. So tender rejections are a direct measure of supply and demand in the freight market because it measures how many loads are being rejected from the total load volume available. The idea is simple. If tender rejections are going down, that gives us insight that contract carriers have no better alternative. They don't have anything else to choose from, so they're taking whatever they can get. However, if tender rejections start going up, that gives us insight that contract carriers have more alternatives. Another thing that can affect tender rejections is, of course, capacity. So for example, if we have a contract carrier who has always had 10 trucks, right, and they provide capacity in the form of 10 trucks, and because of the current market situation, they have to sell 5 of those trucks, well, they're going to be rejecting 50% of the loads because they simply don't have the capacity to actually service that shipper. So to summarize, if capacity is decreasing, tender rejections start increasing. Now, in the trucking industry, there is a term that I found out about. It's called the waterfall theory of freight, which was coined by FreightWaves. And basically what it says is that when a shipper has a load, they don't just have one contract carrier to offer it to, right? They have a list. So they go to the first carrier, they reject it. They go to the second carrier on their list, they reject it. And if all of these carriers reject everything and it all falls apart, that's when the shipper will often turn to the spot market. Now, as more shippers turn to the spot market, of course, it increases rates. Why? Well, because as more shippers put their loads on the spot market, that increases volumes on the spot market. And therefore, those volumes start soaking up the capacity on the spot market. And as capacity gets soaked up, the load to truck ratio changes in the carrier's favor and the rates start going up as well. All right, so here's our tender rejection chart year to date from the beginning of 2023 until right now. We can see that somewhere around the middle of May, right here is when we kind of hit bottom, it seems, in terms of tender rejections. Since there, rejections have been climbing up, particularly since the middle of July. They have pretty much been climbing up without stop. So what does this tell us? Well, it's quite simple. It means that capacity is simply not as abundant as it was before. Now, the why of the question is also important. Is capacity decreasing because carriers are kind of getting rid of their trucks or downsizing or leaving this industry altogether? Or is it because capacity is now more selective? The existing carriers are a little bit more selective in what loads they choose to haul. The answer to this question would actually give us even deeper insight into what is causing these rejections, because a physical decrease in capacity because carriers are downsizing or leaving this industry means that they're simply not coping with the current rates and the current expenses. And this is a little bit more permanent. It's not quite permanent, but a little bit more permanent than the alternative. The alternative is that carriers are simply not afraid to be selective now. That means that they have more options than they did before. In other words, there is more freight in the market to choose from. Now, before we go on to capacity, let's take a look at another chart about tender rejections, which is right here. This shows us tender rejections from January to December every year from 2018 until 2023. 2023 is this blue line right here. Now, something I want you to see is that this purple line on top of it, I'll attach these charts down below. I know it's hard to see. This purple line is 2019. And as you can see, we're starting to kind of follow the 2019 pattern. What is more interesting is that this green line right here, that's 2022. As you can see right here, 2022. And basically, in terms of tender rejections, we are on track to surpass the rejection rates of 2022 in the coming months. So what is happening with carrier capacity? And I'm so happy to say that Sonar finally released a chart for this, which means that I no longer have to spend hours and hours calculating the net change in carrier population every week. Basically, I get to work smarter, not harder. So thank you, Sonar. So this shows us the net changes in trucking authorities, basically considering those who left the industry and those who came in. What is the net change in carrier population? Now, the baseline I set at almost zero. I kind of went a little bit above it by accident, but zero basically means zero net change, which means that the amount of carriers who came in are equal to the amount of carriers that left, meaning zero change in carrier population. Now, this is updated weekly and it is 1.5 weeks behind. But as you can see, from the end of 2022, we have seen a consistent negative change in carrier population, meaning that more carriers left than came in. However, you also have to pay attention to this data relative to previous data. So for example, from the beginning of 2020 until around July of 2022, this shows us that the net change in carrier population was positive. And very often it was over 2,000 carrier increases, right? Now, if we compare this to the amount of carriers lost, we can see that we are barely hitting even 1,000 carriers lost per week, right? Usually it's around the 500 carrier mark, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But what does this tell us? Well, the theory that we all had, including myself, that those that came in during the unicorn period of the trucking industry would be the first to go out because they increased expenses, well, it's just not true. Many of those who entered during the good times are still actively working, or at least are in business on paper. Now, let me show you another chart, which is this one right here. This is from the middle of 2018 all the way to August 25th, because this is 1.5 weeks delayed. The white line is what we saw. It's the net change in carrier population. The red line is the net revocations of authority. And most importantly, the blue line is the total trucking authorities in the market. Since around July 2021, we can see this red line, revocations started increasing. Around this time, the net change in carrier population started decreasing finally, very slowly, as we can see. Now, this is all great, but the most important thing is looking at the total trucking authorities, because this gives us an idea of how many MC numbers are there. Now, unfortunately, it does not give us an idea of how many trucks are there, how many MCs are actually being utilized and not just parked trucks and the owner is paying to renew that insurance and keep that MC active, but it gives us an idea. So since around July of 2022, or actually the middle of July of 2022, maybe August, the total amount of trucking authorities started slowly decreasing. Now, a few things to note. As I said before, this is the total number of MCs. We don't know how many trucks each carrier actually had. The second thing I want you to do is to look at it in terms of relativity, relative to the increase in trucking authorities from the middle of 2020. The increase was pretty steep. The decrease, not so much in comparison. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that consumers are not the only resilient ones. It's also carriers. Finally, to wrap up the topic of capacity, let's take a look at supply and demand directly. And what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at general freight volumes, not spot market, general freight volumes, compared to total trucking authorities from the beginning of this year. As we can see, the white line, this is the freight volumes. The blue line is total trucking authorities. Total trucking authorities from the beginning of the year went down by 4%, while volumes increased by 24% since the start of the year. What does this mean? Well, it means that demand from shippers is increasing while the supply of trucks is slowly deteriorating. Now, for those of you wondering whether all those MCs that got shut down, whether those people are getting soaked up by bigger carriers, therefore not really changing capacity, the answer is no. I'm going to read this to you. According to FreightWaves, truck transportation jobs plummeted in August, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, with the likelihood that the demise of Yellow was largely responsible for sending the employment total down by 36,700 employees. Now, just to show you, this is the chart from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can see that it did plummet down. If you want data, here it is. This is the data. This is where we are as of August. Whoops, here we go. This is as of August. Now, this is the lowest number since it looks like March of 2022. Again, why did this happen? Well, this happened, I tend to agree with FreightWaves. It's most likely a skewed data set because of the bankruptcy of Yellow that happened about a month ago. Now, I know that the comment section, especially of people who only watched until now, will be a crap storm of opinions, because some people will say that I am actively training my competition. Others will say that I am the sole reason that the market is so bad, and so on. But you know what? I get it and I respect it, because people are not saying this to just be mean, although I'm sure there are some that just want to pick a fight with someone. But people are saying this out of fear. And the fear is that any positive outlook in the market is going to increase capacity, therefore ruining any progress or potential progress. So I'm here to answer the question of whether it is finally a good time to start thinking about getting into this industry. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to answer honestly. My personal answer is no. And I'm speaking from the perspective, if I was someone who was looking to get into the trucking industry, would right now be a time where I got in? Right now, I would not. I would still wait. Now, before you guys burn me at the stake, let me explain why my reason is no. It is not because I want to gatekeep information. I think I have proved this time and time again through this YouTube channel. It's also not because I don't want capacity to increase. I mean, I don't want capacity to increase, but this does not influence my answer. I completely understand, and even more so, I respect the fact that everyone who has made their decision to get into this industry will do so regardless of what I say. The reason I'm saying that right now is not a good time to get into this industry is because of the charts we just went through. Now, these charts, there are actually two ways of looking at them, right? One perspective is that the market is improving, that's it. The other perspective is the market is improving because carriers are having a hard time surviving in the current market. So I could never recommend getting into an industry where currently, quite literally, the market is purging capacity and will continue purging that capacity with an even bigger force in the coming weeks, months, and quarters. What are the current realities of the situation? Well, I'm happy to list those out for you from my own personal experience. Since I have been working in this industry for 4 years, I have a ton to share with you. On the expenses side, number one, diesel prices are still skyrocketing. They are currently at $4.81 per gallon. This is the national average, and nobody knows when this is going to slow down, stop, or make a U-turn and start going down. Number two, while truck prices in the market are going down because there is a ton of inventory and not enough demand, most of those trucks, be careful with this, most of those trucks are junkers that will require constant maintenance. And unfortunately, due to inflation and the CPI, the cost of labor and the cost of parts have increased. Just to give you an idea, from January 1st until April 1st of this year, we have spent $48,181 on repairs on one of our used trucks. And finally, new truck prices, if you're looking to get a new truck, they're not budging by much, which is very, very surprising. They're still elevated. Now, on the income side, load rates, especially on the spot market, will probably not see much relief until at least Q2 of 2024. And this is because while capacity is decreasing, it's doing it, as we saw, at a very slow rate. And on top of it, Q1 of every year is known as the dead season. The rates are horrible because the volumes go down. Number two, because capacity, while it's decreasing, it's still very elevated, brokers feel like they still have the upper hand. So do shippers. And that means that brokers will find any and every reason to deny you that load. Hell, even existing carriers are having a hard time because brokers are now using an excuse of, well, you didn't get a random roadside inspection in the state where you're picking up the load, so we're not giving you the freight. And finally, number three, volumes. And volumes is a big thing. The reality is our economy, it's resilient. The consumer is resilient, but the economy is not doing well. And unfortunately, volumes are predominantly based on the health of the economy and the health of the US consumer. And considering that consumers have extremely high debt because they have been spending like crazy, especially in the service sector, the increasing interest rates, the fact that loan repayments will be due starting October, volumes are not likely to skyrocket enough to make the rates on the spot market skyrocket enough to cover the increased cost of everything for the average carrier. Now, I definitely don't want to be in a position where I'm encouraging anyone or discouraging anyone. I do like to take a neutral stance here, but I have to share the realities of the current market because that will really help you make a well-rounded decision. While there are some positive signals from the freight market, there's no denying it, those positive signals are still a ways away from an actual turnaround that can be felt by carriers. To be quite honest, and I'm going to tell you about my operations, I am dreading the next few months until the end of the year because now we have insurance renewals, which means huge down payments, taxes, IRP plates, end of year renewals, all of those, they start to add up. And of course, add in the increased fuel expenses. Yeah, turning a profit is going to be very challenging. It's not going to be easy. Many of you know that we had two trucks that were coming, new trucks that we ordered that were coming. We were supposed to take delivery of them. We took delivery of one, but unfortunately we had to refuse from the other. And this is because we knew that with the current market situation and with the projections for the next few quarters, unfortunately, that second truck would have just eaten away at our bottom line with the increased payments, truck payments because it's financed, with the physical damage insurance, with the liability insurance, with the IRP plates, all of that. So yeah, we decided not to take delivery of our second truck to try and save as much of our bottom line as possible, which is hard for me to admit because for me it's a huge failure, even though I know that it is not. This is just survival mode, just like it should be. We are waiting for the market to get better before we take delivery of a new truck because our goal right now is to not reduce our net income. So you guys make your own decisions. Those were just my 2 cents about getting into the trucking industry right now. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people in the comments having another opinion or sharing their opinion about getting in. But something that I do encourage you to do is just to learn to celebrate the small wins. Smile about the fact that there is something positive happening in the market and hope that the market is going to make a turnaround sooner rather than later. What I do not recommend doing is losing your head and thinking that one small positive indicator from the freight market is going to mean that it's easy sailing from here on out. Be calculated, be logical, try to look deeper and question everything. Wishing you all an amazing week ahead, and I'll see you in the next video.